Roberto Pinotti is an Italian aerospace journalist and recognized once by the legendary J. Alec Hynek as a world-class UFO researcher. He's produced 2 excellent volumes on UFO contacts in Italy, and he joins us now. Hello, Roberto.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Fine.
First of all, I wanted to ask you about Italy's rich history of UFO sightings and incidents. Why do you think that Italy is such a hotspot for UFOs?
Well, probably for, I think, for geographic reasons. After all, Italy's position is in the center of the Mediterranean Sea. And from a strategic point of view, it's rather important. So I think that, well, everybody may have to consider this simple geographical position. You see, for instance, even NATO had UFO incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Just to begin, in 1977, there was a very interesting incident in Sardinia when 3 military helicopters of the Italian army had the opportunity to have a close encounter in the air, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a UFO, and since this happened not far from Cagliari Elmas, which is a civilian and also military airport,
mm-hmm.
well, there were different witnesses about this. So it was rather impossible to cover everything. And this incident came out in the press and so on. So we had the opportunity to confront the military authorities. And at last, in a few months, we had the answer that really UFOs were present in the area. And even the Italian Department of Defense showed us the report, the original military reports of the incident. And this is very interesting because it was one of the first concrete proof that something really happened there, you understand. Then in a few months, we had the explosion of the great Italian UFO wave of 1978. Imagine that we had more than 2,000 sightings in a period of about 1 year between 1978 and 1979.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredible thing.
It was.
At the end, the Italian government was obliged to tell the Italian Air Force, okay, you have to follow this case.
Do you think, Roberto, that you say 2,000 in about a year, do you think anywhere else in the world at any time in history there have been as many UFO sightings in one place?
Well, frankly, as Hynek said, that UFO wave was one of the biggest we had in the world, really. But it was not only Italy which was visited in that period. For instance, we had a lot of other sightings in different countries. So in any case, it is interesting that that year there were interesting events. For instance, 1978 was also called the year of the 3 popes because you know the story. Yep. But not only, we had some political events, very, very important. For instance, Italian Premier Aldo Moro was kidnapped by the Red Brigades and killed, and so on. There was really a moment of instability in that moment. And sometimes psychologists say that in these periods, people see strange things, but it was not the case, because a lot of physical evidence is linked to that UFO wave, you understand?
Yep. Well, the 2 volumes of books, one was what produced in 2017, and the new one has just come out. And you cover every major UFO event in Italy since what, 1907?
Exactly. Well, my purpose was to leave something in English, because you see, in Italy I wrote more than 50 titles starting in 1973. But of course, there is a language barrier
Yep.
outside Italy, you understand? So it was important and useful to make a two-volume book with the most interesting, intriguing UFO cases in our countries. This will remain, in other words, since everybody may read it, you understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, a lot of interesting events occurred really in Italy. For instance, consider that also in 1996, we had in our hands for the first time the evidence that even before the Second World War, UFOs haunted Italy. And the Italian government of that period, the fascist government, took care of this. Of course, they just thought that these unconventional flying vehicles
This
were
was under
just
Mussolini. This was under
yes,
Mussolini.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. They thought that these unconventional flying vehicles were only some new weapon of another European country, but it was not so. And in any case, since the fascists had developed their force at a certain extent, well, they could not accept the idea that someone else could haunt the Italian skies. So Mussolini created this study group, and the leader of this study group was Guglielmo Marconi, who died in 1938, if I well remember. But in any case, the studies the Italian did in this period about these new unconventional vehicles well, was very intriguing, because the form was round. So it's quite completely different. And there was some approach to invent something else, but it was more or less useless. In any case, the studies of the Italians were later inherited by Nazi Germany, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So there was collaboration between the Italians and the
yeah,
Nazis at the time.
In any case, what is important is that the documents we had really proved to be genuine, because we had the forensic analysis of the original documents, and well, there is nothing to do. The documents were really made in 1933, 36, and so on. So, well, someone says, oh, well, but they are not historical documents. I may agree, but consider that if you have some reports about what we call today UFOs, and these reports are dated the 30s, well, this may mean something, I think.
For sure. In 1933, under Mussolini's reign, I believe there was a UFO crash in Italy, and they may have recovered a couple of bodies.
Yeah, in fact, the story started in 1933, and even the group, the study group, was named Cabinet RS-33. RS means Special Research. Is the acronym, no? And 33 is simply 1933. The story is that something crashed in Lombardy in 1933. And of course, this started everything. Of course, this was completely top secret. And well, apart from the fact that in that period, Italy was under a dictator, so no problem, nobody knew anything. But only a few elements in the fascist government knew something about this. That is Mussolini, his son-in-law, Count Ciano, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs, Italo Balbo, well-known aviator and the chief of the Italian Air Force, and just someone else, some scientists, some astronomers, some experts in different disciplines. The guy who sent the documents was simply a relative or one of the components of this cabinet. Mm-hmm. What we could verify in any case is the fact that, and it has nothing to do with the documents we received, really there are a lot of telegrams in the archives in Milan showing that the prefects of the Kingdom of Italy used to send to the chief of the government, in this case Mussolini, news about unconventional flying vehicles. So this was an argument very, very well followed, you understand? And yep. It's an indirect proof that really there was really something and not a simple legend, you understand?
Yeah, I mean, has it been followed up, Roberto? The craft, the bodies, does Italy still have those, or have they been moved elsewhere?
Yeah, the fact is that from what we were told later, well, it seems that everything now is in the United States, in the sense that when the war was over and the Anglo-American armies defeated the Germans in northern Italy, well, this material seems to have been taken to the United States. And this is exactly what we were told by Mr. Brophy, the son of Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Air Force, who was involved in the UFO affair, who told his son that he knew that from Italy, really something who had crashed was taken to the United States. And well, there may be something else to explain why Mussolini was sure that the unconventional flying vehicles were not extraterrestrials,
right,
but Germans. Why?
Yeah.
Because it seems that the corpses which were found, well, were human-like corpses, and well, Nordic type humans. And of course, this fit perfectly to the idea of German pilots, you understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But frankly, they were not Germans, of course.
No.
Otherwise, Second World War would have been won by the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of Nordic alien type sightings here in the US as well. Every country seems to have its own Roswell. What is Italy's Roswell?
Probably is this. Is the 1933 cases, because is something long before. But you see, for instance, here in Italy we have the World UFO Symposium organized by our center, Centro Ufologico Nazionale, CUN, which is one of the 4 oldest UFO organizations in the world. And we organized this during the last 28 years in the state of San Marino, the Republic of San Marino. And for instance, 3 years ago, I was really stunned by something very, very interesting. A French pilot, for instance, a French pilot, Jean-Gabriel Gresley, made a presentation in which he showed us some documents obtained by through the Freedom of Information Act in the USA. Well, it seems that he obtained it not from the Department of the Air Force,
right,
but from the Department of Justice.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Very, very, very clever. No, because there are some very interesting documents. For instance, a letter of General Marshall, and in this letter to the President of the United States, the general says that after the Battle of Los Angeles, something had happened. That is, two objects had been crashed,
Right.
and
Right.
were recovered. One in the open sea by the United States Navy, and the second in the mountains of San Bernardino, and they were recovered and studied. And then there is another letter by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This has nothing to do with UFOs, but this letter, just a little before the president's death, mentions this incredible non-terrestrial science they had, the United States will have to study, but not really now, because the most important thing is just to win the war against Germany and Japan. But this is interesting because it links with the other document, you understand? Frankly, I think that we have a lot of other similar events, but of course nobody knows about this.